and basically in Anaheim. I grew up in Anaheim, but I was born in Oklahoma and on an Army base.
Oh, Dad was in the Army?
Yeah, and so we moved here when I was my first year. So
you don't remember Oklahoma?
I don't. I just been told stories that like they make snowmen out of tumbleweeds at Christmas.
Yeah. So Dad got transferred here, or was he out of the Army? He came to California?
I think he was out shortly after I was born, and then my dad was in the aerospace industry here his whole life.
Really? One of those a lifer in one of those Northrop or TRW?
He was at McDonnell Douglas and Rockwell, and was a big. He was a draftsman, and he was a part of the Apollo programs. I think he was really excited about all of that. And in fact, I get the impression that everybody was pretty excited about working on that together at that time. And he also worked on the space shuttle with at Rockwell, I think.
Drafting,
big it might be cabinets or whatever they needed, but he was a part of that. Yeah.
So he was drawing early on. You looked at Dad drawing.
My dad he didn't draw as much as my grandmother. My grandmother on my mom's side is the one that I think I got my skills from.
Really,
she was really, really gifted, really a great painter, and always making things, but never had a career because she came from a different generation where I don't think she was afforded to go to art school. Today, I think it would have been a different story for her, but back then it was mostly a hobby. But she was always making things, painting.
In what, watercolor or oil, or what?
She did oils, and but she would do things like make little tiny finger puppets out of felt that are just amazing, in detail, and Christmas ornaments and all that kind of stuff. She was really, really gifted.
Do you have any of her paintings? Or anything?
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah,
that's a great
thing. The one thing when she passed away a few years ago, the one thing that I wanted was any of her artwork. I didn't care about anything else.
Well, of course.
Yeah, that because that was my connection with her. It's a strong connection with her was through art.
It seems like so many folk artists out there, like your grandmother. I mean, have these huge, beautiful bodies of work that people can discover 50, 100 years later of someone that just painted a lot of things and got great joy out of it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, what's greater than having a painting, even if it's not a great painting, done by, say, a great grandparent, in your possession? I mean, it's a huge connection to someone that's better than a chair that they bought, or
I couldn't agree more, and a very significant part of my painting. I really think, in thinking about why I'm doing it, it's really in there that I hope, a great-great-grandchild that never met me can look at a thing and just think, oh, that guy saw a beautiful day one day and just wanted to share it with people. And, and he's sharing it with us like 100 years later. He's just saying, hey, this was a beautiful day.
Yeah. I mean, we were at... I think it was in Chicago, at the art museum in Chicago, and it dawned on me, I don't know, this may be obvious, but I was standing in front of a painting. It could move anywhere, and you're standing right where that person was, and it's in relationship to that painting. So I just thought, wow, I'm standing where this artist was 100 years ago.
Right, just standing.
And as far as in relative, as far as spatially.
Of course, to the canvas.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, that's kind of an amazing thing.
And you're looking at that canvas, and you're having a great deal of satisfaction and joy. Hopefully, the same thing the artist felt at the end of the painting.
It's similar to being in reading someone's words and being in their head when reading a book or something.
When did you start? I mean, drawing that thing. Like, I see a thing, and I would like to just share it with people or put it down on paper and have it there and say, see, I saw this.
I think for me, it dawned on me that I had some skill when I was in third grade, and my teacher, Mrs. McMahon, who was this is in about 1970, she recognized some of my drawings, and she, was very complimentary, and I suddenly realized that I had these skills, and so that for me was kind of a flashpoint. Third grade, I started to see that I had these artistic inclinations, and that it started there, really. I mean, I like making things, but that's when I realized, oh, maybe I have something more to add.
Mm-hmm. And it was just caricatures or a guy in a bulldozer or something like a kid would draw?
The first one was a slice of an orange. We had like a
you were doing like a still life.
Yeah. And then I remember she was great. She was a really fun teacher. And I remember she asked us, she had a comic book that was, sorry, I'm forgetting what it was, but it was a reverse world. It's like everything was in reverse, opposite
mm-hmm.
of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so she asked us to draw something that was opposite of reality. And so I chose to take a bunch of army men and have them kissing and hugging, and it's like instead of fighting. And of course, this is 1970. And
sure.
She just flipped out, and so I still remember that drawing. I thought it was funny.
Yeah,
but
she flipped out negatively, or she loved
positively.
it. Yeah, I would think she would love it.
No, she liked it because obviously that was in the middle, right in Vietnam.
Of course, yeah.
And, she was, I would imagine, not 100% for the war,
mm-hmm.
and like a lot of people then, and it was just I had no idea about the implications, really.
Sure,
but because I was just thought it was a funny idea.
Right.
So, but I remember that still, that moment when she said, "Oh my gosh, look at that," and
it was the first real praise you were getting for a skill
for an idea.
Oh, sure.
It wasn't just drawing something, but it was an idea that someone reacted to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you could probably, my daughter's like this. You probably saw with a proper perspective early on for your drawing. That was the weird. With my drawing. I'm like a carpenter trying to build a bookcase and just smashing it with a sledgehammer and trying again and smashing it and trying again. Just trial and error. I overuse erasers because it's just difficult for me to see in that way. And seeing my daughter, a guy like you, or those talented draftsmen who just the orange slice and they just see it how it is. Whatever John Singer Sargent saying, don't paint what it is, paint what it looks like.
Right.
If you paint what it looks like, it'll end up looking like what it is.
Right.
And if you paint what you think it is, you're going to be wrong every time.
Right. It's kind of like doing a portrait and thinking, oh, it's a nose, when you need to just look at the negative space.
Exactly.
And draw the shapes. It's more like looking at a stained glass, a piece of stained glass where everything's broken up into a flat plane.
Yep. What does that little kind of chunk of color look like?
Right. Yeah.
Put that there and stop thinking about a nose.
Yeah. And then to go beyond that, how do you go beyond that where you're not doing something literally, where it's going into a personal vision, where you're not just repeating what you're seeing. How are you adding something to that to make it different? That's certainly challenging.
Well, that's a great challenge that I think is an underappreciated challenge in animation of character creation. And we know sort of what a human head looks like as it turns. We're not sure what a sponge man looks like when he turns, or what his face looks like from profile, or what the giant balloon does that actually changes shapes, or whatever. So it's an amazing. I don't know. I appreciate it so much, and I try to share that with people. The appreciation of the artists who work on that, even in storyboards, that it's a very, very intricate and nuanced skill. But let's not go right there. Let me get there in a second, because I know that you had a great interest in the oceans, in marine life. And I don't know. There was always, people said, "Oh, Steve, yeah, he was in marine biology or whatever," and you think, "Oh, okay." But I don't know about that part of your life. So did you study that, or were you? You actually toured on the Calypso?
No. But I probably wished that when I was a kid. First of all, Jacques Cousteau and his shows. I mean, at the time in the 60s and the 70s, he provided a view into that world, which I'm not sure there was really there before. He filmed, of course, he helped develop the Aqualung too.
Of course.
But that show, for me as a kid, it was just fascinating, and I think pretty much anyone is fascinated by the ocean, because it's a world that we really can't participate in 100%. You have to have an aqualung or a snorkel, and you can't just live there freely. And so early on, that was probably what got me interested. And then when I was a teenager, we at my high school in Anaheim, we had this dive program that is through what was called the ROP, Regional Occupational Program, something like that. So they had this great dive program that was free. Of course, to get certified, you had to just do everything, and it took like a year to get certified. It wasn't just one of these things where you could get certified in a weekend. But I have to say, I remember we did a lot of dives in Laguna Beach, which is not too far from Anaheim. It's in Orange County. And I still remember the first time putting on I actually got interested, and at first got books from the library about diving. All of the photos were black and white photos, and I was really immersed in it and interested. When I put on the snorkel for the first time, mask and snorkel, and went snorkeling at Laguna, I realized it's all in color. And even California has a lot of color, maybe not as much as the tropics, like when you snorkel in Hawaii. But there is a lot of color, and suddenly it just was a shock for me, and I was riveted by that experience. And from then on, I was really interested in diving and got certified. Did a lot of dives in Laguna, over in Catalina, and just got fascinated with the ocean. And I thought that if I was going to do something, it would be great. I would like to be a marine biologist. And the art part of me, it came easy. The research and studying for that topic was much harder. And I never really saw the two of them coming together.
You mean the art part of you in the ocean, meaning that the poetic side of Jacques Cousteau, who was always reading some piece of prose around this thing, trying to get across to the audience the beauty of the oceans.
Well, I just didn't see how the two fit together, because I was interested in making weird little paintings, and they weren't necessarily related. In fact, I had a teacher when I graduated from high school, knew I really was interested in marine biology and was an artist, and they said, "Well, why don't you paint fish?" And I just thought, that sounds really boring. It wasn't. It was kind of like I had two different things that I didn't, again...
And it was sort of late in high school. You were like the arts kid, the artist kid, and the ocean kid?
And a band geek. I was
were you?
A band geek, and I liked the arts, but...
what instrument did you play?
Trumpet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
because maybe the tuba would be too heavy for you. Sure.
But anyway, early on, I decided, I was going to go to school. I went to Humboldt State eventually and studied marine science there. And actually, while I was studying there, my painting just kind of exploded for me. So I was minoring in art, and I had teachers in the art department saying, "What are you doing? Why aren't you in the art school?"
Really?
Yeah. And I just I guess I thought, well, I do this. I like marine biology and science, and I'm an artist, so I'll end up making exhibits or working at a museum or something. I just immediately put the two together.
What were you painting? Were you painting sort of realistic, classical realism of fish?
These weird, surreal landscapes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with humans, and maybe there's some fish occasionally in them, but it wasn't like, I was painting. Again, I wasn't painting fish. You were painting from your imagination. Yeah, it wasn't that interesting to me, ironically. And then, so I graduated knowing that I wanted to go back to school, but I was going to go back for art eventually. And I worked various jobs. I worked for the Park Service in Utah one summer, and I worked at the Boys Club up in Hunters Point in San Francisco as an art director. And then I finally landed the job I wanted, which was, even though those were great jobs, I worked at the Marine Institute in Dana Point, California, and it was exactly what I wanted to do, which was teach kids about tide pool ecology. We did whale watches. We had a living history program about Richard Henry Dana, who sailed here in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah, 2 years before the mast.
And then 2 years before the mast, the program was based on that book.
Was it really?
Yeah. Well, it's at Dana Point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I love that book.
Yeah, and so it was a great. I worked there for 3 years, and I know this is going on and on, but what was essential?
No, hey, you brought up Richard Dana 2 years before the mast. We're good.
The essential part, really, for later for SpongeBob was that while I was working there, I was a staff artist. I didn't get paid much, but anything they needed, I would make because it was fun. I really realized that I like making things, and that was key to me. I didn't look at my watch when I'm making something. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that was when I was immersed, to use that word again. But when I was there, the head of the education department asked me if I would be interested in making a comic book about tide pool animals, and it was an educational comic. And in that comic, I had all the invertebrate animals that are in our tide pools on our coast. And the tide pool is what's left when the water recedes at low tide. And all these animals have adapted to that harsh change every day. So I made this comic. I sent it out to to publishers, and no one wanted it. And then I got the other thing that happened at that period was that I went to a film festival for animation, and it just suddenly dawned on me that I'm not going to go back to school for painting. I'm going to study animation. And in fact, some of the films at the ends of the films, they were made by students from Calarts, and it said made at Calarts, and I said, I'm going to Calarts.
Really?
Yeah. It kind of all came together. And I applied, and I applied for the experimental animation program, which was run by a man named Jules Engel, who was a colorist for Disney and UPA, a big part of the modernist film movement. He was a great guy. He also was a painter, so I think he saw my paintings and could easily say, "Oh, this guy could fit into this program." I didn't have any animation really. And
you just showed the imaginative paintings and your comic.
Yeah, and then so I got accepted, and I studied experimental animation, and I graduated.
Now, when they say experimental animation,
that means anything goes. It means it could be content. It could be the form. It could be that you make films out of sand by filming piles of sand changing,
right.
Cut out animation, whatever there was a guy in that program that made things out of gum wrappers and animated them. My films were all drawn, and I tried to use my style. It wasn't an industry style, and the films that I made ended up in festivals, and eventually I got a job through that on a show made by Nickelodeon in the early 90s called Rocko's Modern Life.
Sure.
Joe Murray is the creator of that show.
Yeah.
So it's a long-winded story as to how kind of everything kind of came around.
But Nick saw these experimental animations that you were doing at film festivals, and they came to you and just said,
right.
"Hey, come on in
Joe
and
did.
think up some stuff.
It was really Joe, and taking cues, I think, from Ren and Stimpy, where they were looking for people to write and direct instead of writing a script and storyboarding like The Simpsons does, which is an excellent show. But the paradigm was different. The mode of writing was, in the case of Ren and Stimpy, Rocko, even Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab.
They're looking for like a vision and a voice of a particular animator.
Someone that could draw and write the story so that it's not scripted, and that way it becomes, I think, in the case of SpongeBob and some of these other shows, it's more visual. The cues, you could, sell the story with perhaps a visual idea instead of a description.
Right.
So anyway, that was pretty key. I learned a lot from Joe, and to continue on.
Sure, man.
The thing about working on that show, I learned a lot about how to tell a story, but also what are the ingredients you need to make chemistry for a series.
This was on Rocko.
On Rocko, yeah. What are the ingredients? So I learned. I would say without that experience, I don't know if I could have ever come up with SpongeBob.
What did you find vital ingredients being that you didn't that didn't occur to you?
I think that the main thing is you have to have a strong character. If your lead character should be somehow engaging and funny. Otherwise, they'll get lost to the incidental characters. The thing about it, what happened was while working on Rocko, one of the writers, Martin Olson, who I think he's writing for Phineas and Ferb right now, he saw that comic book. I had it on my.
He saw the original comic book
from back when I worked at the Marine Institute, and he said, "What, are you crazy? This is your show." And I thought, a show? I hadn't even thought about making a show, and it wasn't my show, but it was the inspiration for the show. I realized, I thought, yeah, if I did an animal show, I should do one about all these animals and plants and things in the ocean that I've been fascinated by for years. Of course, it's not going to be educational. It's going to be entertaining, trying to tell stories that are funny. And so that started the wheels rolling. And as far as finally the two things that I was always interested kind of dovetailed at that point.
Were you excited at that point when you started to first make drawings of a sponge, or was this kind of, well, let's take a shot at this thing?
I think at first it was I didn't know 100. I knew that I could be interested in that landscape, like say doing an undersea world where the characters walk around and it's more like our world, but there in the ocean. I was interested in like a tiki Hawaiian feeling and nautical, some of the nautical stuff, like the Krusty Krab for example, is a lobster trap. It's based on a New England lobster trap. Things Popeye, that Popeye rivets and steel,
right.
So I thought, wow, this I'm interested in all of that. But then it was, yes, who are the characters? What's it about? And so I started taking some of the characters from my comic, like Sea Star and crabs and the sponge, and started drawing them. And then it dawned on me that at that time everybody was doing buddy shows, or I should say, like the successful show Ren and Stimpy was a great buddy show, and I thought, I can't do a buddy show. I got to do something about one character. So I decided, just so that I wouldn't be going down the same road, I decided, okay, if I'm doing about one character, what's the kind of character that I like? And first of all, what's the weirdest character? What's the weirdest animal? the sponge came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And in the comic, I have a sponge, but it's a natural shaped sponge. And the comic was called The Intertidal Zone, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. So, and his name was Bob the Sponge. He was kind of like the announcer of the comic.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I started drawing sponges and thinking about, well, if I liked the characters that I liked as a kid were Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin, those kinds of films were popular again in the early 70s. And so I really liked, and Pee-wee, I like Pee-wee Herman. I really liked that idea of an innocent. And once I started locking into that, the weirdo sponge, innocent like a
and
child,
naive,
that to me, I could see humor coming from that. And then I would show it to colleagues, and then the idea of a sink sponge instead of the natural sponge, I drew that, and then it just all synced together because the form meets the function. The form matches the personality. He's square. He's a square personality, and so that first drawing is when I said, okay, this is it. This is what my main character is, and then from there I started building. Where does he work? What does he like to do? He's a kid. He likes to blow bubbles. He chases jellyfish. He works at the Krusty Krab. A kid looks in a McDonald's, sees someone working at the grill, and must think that's the best job anyone could ever have. And and some people probably do like that job.
Yeah.
But I think most adults maybe want to achieve something more. Mm-hmm. But a kid...
So you just make
that's the
cheeseburgers for happy people.
That's the perfect job. And so I just, sort of put all those kind of ideas together.
Now, did you make you made a pilot of it, didn't you? Did you make a brief,
our first pilot was 7 minutes.
Yeah. Because I was down here, I don't know, doing voice in something or other, and I remember first hearing about it, and it's a funny character and everything, but it was... To me, it just seemed risky. I mean, in a good way, risky. Like Spongebob Squarepants, because he has square pants. You're thinking, okay, looks funny, But was it difficult to get it on the air?
Well,
how do people react when you're showing them the 7-minute thing of the innocent sponge?
I think it's harder to sell it without a film. Once the pilot was made, I think people could start to feel it and feel the character and laugh. But yes, when you just show people drawings and you're trying to explain, this is like Charlie Chaplin. He's an innocent sponge who lives in this town called Bikini Bottom. Yeah, I think there was a lot of questioning. I remember early on, it's all stair-step. They see the pitch, then they give you a little money to develop the pitch some more. Then at some point they said, we'll give you money to make a storyboard, right? So that was key because you could pitch the storyboard at least and tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we pitched, we were developing this board, and I was getting ready for Albie Hecht, who is head of the animation then, to come and hear our pitch here in California. They're in New York. And I heard before he got here that they were all worried, like, what is he, living in a pineapple? What is that?
Yeah, right.
Why is he living in a pineapple? And first of all, my logic was, it's Hawaiiana.
Mm-hmm.
The pineapple in some cultures represents friendship. Like in England, I think you'll see a door knocker.
It's all over because that meant welcome.
Yeah.
In 150 years ago, it was incredible to have a pineapple.
It makes sense that he would live in the pineapple, right? Because he's friendly. But it was missed on a lot of people, and so Albie's coming out, and so in the first line of the pitch, I changed to it was a Jacques Cousteau imitation, and the first line was like, to see home of my favorite creature, SpongeBob SquarePants, and I added the line, of course he lives in a pineapple, you silly,
right.
And so I pitched that to Albie. He laughed. I mean, I'm sure because he knew what everybody was saying. And then I was kind of like, it took
Smooth.
off from there. And and I owe a lot to Albie because I know he advocated for us and he thought it was funny, and he had to sell it.
So he goes back to New York and just says, I saw this thing about a sponge.
And I know there was some questions, but then I gave us the money to make the pilot. And then, like I said, once you see the pilot, you kind of, that's it. I mean, it's the beginning, but you should at least see what the character is. You know, do you like the character? Do you like the world? I think you have to come away from it with at least those two things.
Yeah. And so, did they make an order for a lot of episodes at first, or just a few? Did they really get behind it?
Well, I feel like they got behind it in that they ordered a season, and of course everybody does that. You order a season, they don't usually order more than that. So it was kind of ordered the season, and as we went, we started to build an audience, I think by the end of second season we had fans, and third season. I'm not sure when it all clicked in, but they also, the other thing is that once they do have the pilot, at least back then, they take the pilot, they get a room of kids, a room full of kids, they air the pilot, and the kids have a happy face, sad face knob. And then so they determine whether they liked it or hated it. I mean, and I think the test came back pretty positive.
Yeah, they must have broken the knobs for happy. I mean, that was good stuff.
So
I just remember early on in it, my daughter, now grown, but this is many years ago, but she was running for something at her school, and she changed the words to the Spongebob Squarepants theme. This was very early in the show, but I knew you and everything, and something was that. So she made this song. I was thinking, boy, honey, do you think enough people know about SpongeBob yet? It's kind of new out there. So it comes the day, and we're there, and she's going to run for something, and she goes up there and says, "Are you ready, kids?" And the whole school gasped, she saw the show that I saw, and there's a little, just a little rumble in the room, and she goes, I can't hear you. The whole school is, aye, aye, Captain, and they all start screaming SpongeBob SquarePants, and I thought, I think this show is bigger than I thought.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good story.
Yeah, well, when did you feel like this snowball is really rolling down the hill, and it was going very well, and kids were loving the show? But when was that thing where you're going, wow, there's something going on here?
Yeah, it's kind of a blur now, but there was a couple moments. One, I mean, it's weird, but I was standing outside of the building here one night, and it was dark. I'd worked it wasn't really late, but it was nighttime. And I saw this, they used to have statues of the characters on top of the building. And I'm standing there at the gate, and I see this car pull up across the street, and these two adults get out, and they run across the street, and they look, and they're pointing at SpongeBob on top of the building and talking, and then they run back to their car. And it was things like that. I thought, wow, those adults must know what the show is. Or being in Tijuana, crossing the border and seeing bootleg ceramics, which... a
SpongeBob cookie jar or whatever that's that's
stuff
made in
like
Mexico.
That. I mean, today, going to another country, and I've been in Mexico and seen some of the graffiti on the wall.
Well, sure.
SpongeBob.
Well, when did that? Now, I told people, in my in terms of Back to the Future, when you're in that and it's getting and it's being released, and it was, oh my gosh, it's great, and you're, wow, that's terrific, and then everyone's seen it, says it's great, wow, that's great, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you're going, this is terrific, but then it starts growing to this gigantic size, like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and something, and you're going, it's fab. Run! Everybody run! It's too big. I'm afraid of it now. Yeah. Was there a moment when when you looked at your lovely wife or some of your friends, you go, "Wow, this is really like huge."
Yeah. Well, I never thought it. First of all, I never thought, really, honestly, that I thought we might just get one season, and then it's weird, and it was we have a cult following or something, and then it gets canceled. I didn't really think that it would become more of a mainstream show. I mean, that honestly, I didn't really see that coming, and as far as the Flashpoint, it just really kind of crept up on me, and to the point where you realize, we're at Universal Studios. This is a while ago, and I turn around and there's this giant mural on the wall of SpongeBob, and it's just kind of like, I didn't even know that it was there. Mm-hmm. Things like that, it just sort of all add up to this thing where you realize it's bigger than you are. It is like Frankenstein, or a friendly Frankenstein.
Well, a friendly Frankenstein, it's not. It's seriously damaging or whatever. But you just realize it is. Its magnitude is beyond imagination.
It becomes out of your control in some ways. I mean,
but that drawing came from a pencil that you owned.
I know,
and went to like around the world. In
believe me, it's just I mean, I'm very fortunate. I feel very lucky that it's gone well, and but I honestly, I don't think you can go into the situation thinking it.
No, I don't think so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I'm going to make my attitude. For example, early on, back when Nickelodeon, when we did the pilot, there was talk about, well, we'd like our winning formula as kids, animation about kids, and in school. That's somebody decided that. And they said, we want you to put SpongeBob in school and have parents. And I basically said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not my idea. My idea is that it's this kid that's an adult, and he has a job, and he lives in a house. He's autonomous from his parents. And I was willing to walk based on that because I didn't want to make the show I didn't see.
Right.
And I think that happens a lot, unfortunately. I think people...
You think most guys go, okay, I guess we got to give them parents?
And you want it. And maybe you make some concessions. My concession was, I'm not going to change the entire context of the show, but I will bring parents into an episode. They'll come visit, right?
Right.
And they
also, Patrick's fake dad, and his real dad.
Well, that was another episode, but we had SpongeBob's parents come. And then on a positive thing for me that came out of it was, I said, well, what if he goes to boating school so that he's getting his driver's license? So that's an adult pursuit, and it brings in a new character, Mrs. Puff, who I love. And so it ended up that added an aspect to the show.
Right.
But I think you do have to, at some point, say, this is it, that is not it. And it also helps when you have a staff.
Right.
To be able to say, we're not doing topical jokes. We try to stay away from topical humor. It's based on character. And early on, the shows were always about SpongeBob, right?
Right, sure.
So those are things you have to have in the design of the show in order to communicate what you want. So
I love the Bob Newhart story of back doing the Bob Newhart show, where he came for the first part of the season, and the first couple scripts come out, and they say, "Well, Bob, we got this idea. You and Emily are going to have a baby, and you're going to have a family now, and have a lot of situations." And he just said, "Great, man. Who are you going to get to play Bob?" I'm looking forward to watching it. I mean, it won't be me, but good luck with whoever you get to play Bob. So, you do have to stick to your guns.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to try to incorporate what somebody wants if it's doable and if it works into what you're imagining. But I feel like a lot of times the development process can just labor something to the point where you don't know what you got anymore. Yeah, I think that happens. Anyway, I guess I just realized that I was going to do it the way I want to do it or not do it. I'd rather fail trying to do what I want.
Right. Now I know. I told. I think I told Derek this. I may have told you a number of years ago, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable by it. But when those early SpongeBob episodes were happening, and I was doing a lot of episodes with you, my wife was very sick, and she was, she had surgeries and doctors and everything, and I was so upset and just crazy. I couldn't get cast in anything, because I think casting people or producers, they smell that fear or desperation or something. So I couldn't work in anything. Everything was falling apart, and I had kids to raise and everything. But I was coming to Nickelodeon Studios to do episodes of this wonderful show about a funny sponge with wonderful people, a great funny cast, and improvising these jokes and everything, and everyone's so pleasant. And I guess I'm just trying to say, I so love SpongeBob. It is a character above everything else, maybe in my adult life or in my work. It seems like a very small thing in my resume. And I have a SpongeBob pillow, in my office. I have SpongeBob things on keychains and everything. And it really isn't that I'm carrying the SpongeBob thing on a keychain to show people, well, yes, I do a couple of voices. No, it's really to remind me of what joy and what positive effect, a small drawing of a funny sponge can have in a person's life. Now, I don't know, projecting it from me to literally around the world, but I'm sure that you've probably heard thousands upon thousands of stories, especially of children who've been in difficult situations in their life, who've been really, really positively affected by SpongeBob. Can you feel that in your heart, Stephen, that he started this thing that really ended up to be a very good thing that's way, way more than a funny cartoon?
Well, certainly the kids, as we have Make-A-Wish. Some kids come here.
Right. I know Tom is Tom Kenny, who does the voice of SpongeBob, calling kids and everything. Yeah. SpongeBob making phone calls.
Yeah, the kids are always great because no matter who they are, they're excited about it, and it's not necessarily that they want an autograph. You know what I mean? They're just excited about the show. But
how many SpongeBobs have you been forced to draw in a restaurant?
I've done a few things for charity, but I don't have to do it that much in a restaurant because I'm not recognized that often. But which I like, and I try to keep a low profile. But it is great to know the kids like the show. That we find out that I've just met a woman at a writers conference who has an autistic friend who just loves SpongeBob, and he connects with it somehow. I don't know why, but hearing that stuff is great. That's great. The gravy over everything.
Yeah, but my point, I guess, being is there's a lot of gravy. There's a lot of gravy in this mashed potato of SpongeBob, which is funny and colorful and innocent and terrific.
Yeah.
But I think it's just way, way more than that, which is a great thing.
Well, I have to say too that it's the synergy of all the people who worked on the show and the voice casting. As you said, all of those people working together, it just becomes something more than what I would have ever imagined. It's a lot of people say, "Oh, do you do the voice of SpongeBob?" And I always say yes. No, I don't say that. But I explain to them it's animation is a hugely collaborative. I basically made the chemicals that we mix together, but it takes the voice talent, it takes the artists, it takes people, really great writers with funny ideas, and all of it. Everybody. As I said earlier, with the same mission, coming together And when that happens, it's really exponential. You know what comes out of it. It's greater than what I can imagine alone for certain.
Sure.
For sure. So that's really fun. I did want to mention, as far as just going to another country and showing an episode and having people, we went to Brazil a couple years ago, and I think we had the shows in English, but they were translated, and people laughing, and you're just like, wow, this is great. I love the fact that we can tell a story and someone that speaks Portuguese gets it, and they laugh at the same thing, and then we all can laugh at the same thing.
Right.
That's right. I'm in a way, it gives you hope.
Sure. It must be in lots of languages, huh? It must have been translated into a lot of languages.
Yeah, and in Europe, and
Well, it's good that you don't draw SpongeBob for people, or you could feign an injury. Have a little glove. Oh, my hand. I did. I was at a big event in Florida, and I shared a limousine for an afternoon with Walter Lantz.
Oh, wow.
Who had come up with Woody Woodpecker. A wonderful man. We had a great time. A real gentleman. And, and I'm interested in the animation world and everything. And I'm asking him a few questions. He was very old at that time. He wasn't feeling particularly well, and I'm trying to give him a bit of privacy. But we're getting shuttled around by press people, happen to be in the same car. Every single person, every security person, every driver, everyone. Oh, Mr. Lance, would you draw me a Woody Woodpecker? Draw me a Woody Woodpecker. And, clearly the man was pretty aged, and with his shaky hand, he was gracious to every single person drawing a Woody Woodpecker and his very famous Walter Lance signature that he did that was on his animation. And at the end of it, it's time to say goodbye to him. And of course, I said a warm goodbye. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Good.
I didn't ask him for anything. I just said, "Boy, I so enjoyed spending time with you." And I think, Mr. Lance, you need me to travel with you to be your bodyguard to break the pencil and and throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
So I hope that people aren't after you until you're 94 years old.
I usually, I just at conferences like that, there's so many people. I just I'll sign a poster or something.
Right.
But that's I usually won't draw because then I'll never get out of there.
Right.
It'll take 10 years.
Right. Now, speaking of Walter Lantz going into his 90s, now you're a healthy young man. After you've created this gigantic thing where people, as I joked with Doug Lawrence on the podcast, that I knew it was huge when some lady came up to me, not playing SpongeBob or Patrick or anybody. She wanted me to sign her SpongeBob toilet seat. Okay,
nice.
Once you get to the point of selling toilet seats, it's a very, very major cultural phenomena. So, are you working now on your White Album? Now that you've done Rubber Soul and a number of things?
Well, the big thing right now is Paul. I should mention Paul Tibbett is after I did the movie, Paul came in and basically has been running the show, kind of in my shoes. And
did you just need a rest at that point, you think?
I felt like it's time for new blood, and I think it's good to change things up to keep it fresh. And I'm a producer on the show, and I still look at everything. But Paul and I have been working on a movie premise, the story for a second movie.
A second SpongeBob movie. Wow.
That's really what we've been busy with. Paul's going to direct this one. I'm going to produce, but I'm going to help write it. And we're kind of excited about the story. I can't talk about it yet, but the thing it was announced that it's going to be delivered in 2014, so we had to get on it because that's only 2 years. And
at Funimation, you got to get on the stick.
Yeah, you got to get on it.
Yeah.
But I think that's our new. I guess if you're thinking of a White Album, that's really what.
Well, that's a gigantic undertaking.
Album.
Gigantic.
Yes, that's large.
I mean, the first movie was, that was a lot of work.
Yeah,
an
it was
incredible
huge.
amount.
And I think from the first movie, we learned a lot because one of the things in the first movie, you know, as I said, we write the show by storyboarding, and we don't write a script. We didn't write a script in the first movie, and we found very, you know, soon that it's incredibly hard to just kind of write a loose outline and start boarding and make a movie. We finally pulled it together, but it was challenging. This time, Paul and I have really blocked out, I think, the 3 acts, and we have a fun twist. We know where the movie's going a little more than in the first case, and so I think, but it's always hard. It's going to be challenging no matter what. Always the second movie is challenging, and so. But that's, as far as the White Album, that's
sounds good.
What we're working on.
Is there a time where you think you'll go back and like put on a ranger hat and go back to the ocean, or do you see yourself, you know, sharing your visions and your art in a different, maybe, you know, someday way down the line, a different animation project or something, or do you think this is such a grand and huge amount of work for you, and such a cultural touchstone that you can go and walk the tide pools and show some third graders some starfish and have a peaceful and good time?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in other. I really graduated from school in animation thinking I was going to make festival films and probably teach. I never thought I would end up in the industry. I didn't know if it was possible, really. And so I never really, as I said earlier, saw the things that I was interested in coming together in the form of a TV series. But here we are. And over the last couple years, I've been working on another short film for festivals. So I have been doing animation. And this is a personal film.
Sure.
It's just
back to the experimental animation.
I'm animating it myself. I'm painting the paintings, and it's called Hollywood Boulevard USA, and it's really just I videotape people walking, and it's all walk cycles, which is a fundamental part of animation, and it's to a piece of music. So it's not a narrative. It's just really about people in our town.
Will people ever be able to see that?
I hope so. I hope to get it done. It takes forever. It's like flogging yourself animating.
Really? But you'll finish it, and
I'm hoping to be done before this fall because the movie's going to kick in a year. So, and then I'll send it out to festivals
and stuff like that. How does a guy with no experience in animation like you expect to get involved in any animation festivals?
Yeah,
I'll bet you get a little of attention. I'll bet you're able to place it in a couple of festivals. Just two. A festival in Des Moines, Iowa, and one somewhere in Wisconsin. Other than that, best of luck to you.
Yeah.
And Stephen, it's so generous to give me some of your time, and and I reflect. I think so many millions of people who just so love your work and just want to say it and are unable to, or maybe they do through the internet. You probably have a skillion emails and message boards and everything. But thanks so much. Thanks so much for your time today. And hey, thanks for SpongeBob and everything. I appreciate it.
Well, and thanks for your participation in the show. I've always loved your characters. So
it was small but deeply dedicated.
No, it's great.
Well, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah.